Hi, welcome to Bharat Times. Today we have with us Veena Gokhale. Welcome. And she's the author of this book, Bombay Wali and Other Stories. This is her first book, and they are most of them are set in Bombay. The stories,
yes,
and everything.
Half of them.
And wow, half of them are set in
Half of
Bombay.
12, yes.
And she is from Mumbai, and I did read actually some of the stories, very interesting stories, especially the first one, quite long, set in Bombay, and the way it goes through, takes you through the streets and places of Bombay along with the story and stuff. That was very interesting. So tell us what prompted you to write this book, what inspired you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
As far as short stories go, I've been writing them and poems since I was quite young. Then I went through a period of writing them in my childhood and adolescence, but then I became a journalist and I was in Bombay, in fact. So I was very busy with my career, doing a lot of feature writing, and I think that did help as well, because then I had to describe the city and I met all kinds of interesting people. And then when I came to Canada in the early 90s to do a master's, I was at York University, all these stories started to tumble out with all these Bombay characters, very typical. And the first story I wrote was called Reveries of a Riot, and it was inspired by a real-life rioting that started in late 1992. The Bombay riots, the start of this very long, drawn-out, very violent, the worst riots the city had ever seen. And I guess being here and really shocked about that situation, what's happening back home, kind of triggered that story. It's kind of the most abstract story in this book. Most of the others are more character and plot-driven. So that was the first story, and then lots of these other stories.
So yes, interestingly, it also, in a way, it gives you a historical background, I guess, also in Bombay, in India, and stuff like that, and what was going on in there at the time.
It's true, because I lived in Bombay and was a journalist in Bombay in the 1980s, and that's the Bombay I really talk about more in this
in the 80s.
book.
Yeah.
It was just the way the city looked, the kind of people. It's a very cosmopolitan city, always was, and here too you have people from different ethnic backgrounds. In this book, for example, there's a Parsi woman called Feroza in the second story. The first story has these three women journalists. Again, one is from the north, one is from possibly Gujarat, and one is from the south. But this is very typical in Bombay, that all these different ethnic groups, religious groups, and sometimes even classes can come together. So
okay. And then here you have one Zindagi Ittifaq Hai. Life is a chance. Interesting. You went.
That song, Zindagi Ittifaq Hai.
Very good song. So, do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Actually, the two stories that feature journalists, since I did know the world of journalism, is the first one, Bombay Wali. Very different stories, nevertheless, about journalists. And the second one is Zindagi Ittifaq Hai. And what happens in this story is there's this guy called Vishwanath Iyer. Vish, he's called by his friends. In Bombay, we always had short forms for everyone. Delhi, I think, is like that. And so he works for a newspaper called the Daily Disquieter, which is in a very typical sort of Bombay location, dingy sort of office building. And he's in the process of writing a story, but he's called away for something. And then a page flies out of the window. There's a big wind, and it falls out of the window, and that's how the story starts. So he misses a piece of information that's very important for his article. And he goes down, and there's a cow, and there's a beggar child, and there's a policeman, and these kinds of situations which are typical of Bombay on the one hand, but it's like a bit of farce, the whole thing. So it's like a wild goose chase. He's trying to find this lost piece of information and trying to meet his deadline, this kind of thing. And it's called Zindagi Ittifaq Hai because it has this happen chance.
Did you ever see the movie Kaagaz Ke Phool?
Yes.
That it's like kind of similar. He's always running after his gullo there, the piece of poetry that he wrote. Kind of reminded me of that.
Another one set in Bombay, I think.
I think it might have been. Yeah, it's a very old movie, but
I had this idea of this page disappearing, and the page itself, I give it a bit of agency, because I sort of say the page is trying to escape, but it's found and held back. So it's just a fun kind of story, but very Bombay oriented. Again, describes certain locales and the ambience of Bombay.
Oh, nice. You have a lot of interesting stories here. Which one, let's say, is your favorite?
I know I've always asked this, and I'm afraid I'm like the prototypical mother who says I love all my children equally. But most people have something they like more than another one, because I think there's a resonance. Quite a few people like this story about the Parsi woman Feroza, because it's about this woman who was left to look after her aging parents. She has a brother and sister, but they leave the city, and she's unmarried and she's with her parents. And this we do see this kind of situation where the child who's left at home or whatever does the caregiving for the parents. I mean, the story has a lot of other things going on, but this, I think people identified maybe with this character. She's kind of middle-aged and has very old parents, and so that was one people liked a lot.
That's interesting. And then we take the journey from, from Mumbai to Kathmandu.
Yes, there are 3 stories which are not set in India. So 6 stories in Bombay, 3 other stories in other parts, and then 3 other stories set outside India, and one of them being Kathmandu. In Kathmandu, there's actually a Canadian character called April. So she's a young student, young girl who ends up going to Kathmandu with her boyfriend. They recently met. So it's an adventure between school. They take a semester off. This is often done here, as you know. But then she falls sick and he takes off on an expedition on his own. So she's kind of left to look after herself, and then she meets another character and things happen. So
this takes place in Kathmandu.
Takes place in Kathmandu, and I think the idea there is this culture shock idea, because sometimes you want to go to exotic places and have adventures, but when you get there, sometimes the first thing you might face is not a sense of wonder or awe that might come later, but it's like, oh my God, how can I deal with this? And people do fall sick often when they go to these places, foreigners particularly. So it starts off that way, but it kind of, she does discover the city anyhow in her own way.
Right.
So
do you think it has any similarity to, let's say, when you came to Canada or something? Did you experience any culture shock?
Not so much, except for food, because I like hot, spicy, vegetarian food. So I think I was pretty westernized in the sense of had a lot of exposure.
Okay.
And you see so much American TV and things, movies. But Canada is still quite different, I think. But not exactly a shock, but let's say there were many strange things. For you too, perhaps.
Of course, yeah. And food was one of them, obviously.
Yeah.
And some of the food I couldn't get used to for a long time. Okay, so now this is a great, I guess this was released in Toronto at first?
This was, it's a Toronto publisher, and we had a launch in Toronto, but as well at the Blue Metropolitan Festival here that happens every year.
Blue Metropolis.
That happens every year around this time actually.
Yeah.
And
they have another one coming.
So there were two launches done by the publisher, but I also took the book out on the road a lot by myself with friends and other contacts, and through Canada Council, grants, libraries and things like that. So it's been around for a year, and it's in its 2nd edition now, so I'm quite happy that it's still around.
It's a great read, excellent stories. And any other your writing projects that you have in the future?
I have written a novel, and there's a long process of writing and rewriting, and I get more and more wonderful feedback, and quite different. It's against the backdrop of international development set in an imaginary African country with very strong women characters. It's quite a different book. So hopefully someday it'll get out there.
And I guess maybe some stories we'll say, in the future we'll read about Canada, Montreal perhaps?
Yes, I think it's coming. There's already a story here where somebody immigrates from a Caribbean island country to Toronto. So I think it's moving in that direction.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thanks
Veena.
so much.
Okay. There you go. Now you can go and buy yourself a copy of Bombay Wali and Other Stories by Veena Gokhale.
And the website, actually, I should mention, is www.veenago.com/story. So you can get all the information, ordering, or there's other information, interviews, and fun stuff.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Thanks, Veena.